What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about a book that I have been asked about so many times over the last year. It's a book that is really amazing, so good. And I think that, with it getting ready to, if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be coming back. It was supposed to come back sometime this fall, and it hasn't been back on the shelves yet. But issue number 6 is out there somewhere, waiting to be read. And I figured let's talk about the Image comic series, Bitter Root, by David F. Walker, Sanford Greene, and Chuck Brown. And in this video, we are going to talk about why the Sangeryes are probably the most interesting family of monster hunters in all of fiction. And we're going to talk about that and a lot more right now. But first, let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Before we get started, if you want to see more awesome comic book videos like this one, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click. Bitter Root. This is a story that takes place around the 1920s, roughly 1924, if you're able to piece all the information together between Bitter Root issues number 1 through 5, plus the Bitter Root Red Hot Summer one-shot, which this video is going to cover all of that in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And this is all during the height of the Harlem Renaissance. The world is a lot like the world we know today, except that there's one key difference. Hate, greed, racism, bigotry, and other evil adjacent emotions can literally transform you into a monster. You know that old spiritualism, that old saying we used to always cling to back in the day when bad things happen? We would always say, that's just the devil working. That's just the devil making you do that. Well, here, it's literal. And these monsters run roughshod across the land, across the world, seeking the destruction and or corruption of others. These monsters, called Jinnu, are human beings who become so overwhelmed with hatred, racism, bigotry, and other such evil feelings that they turn into hideous and wildly dangerous monsters. They don't get to run unchecked, though. A family of monster hunters has been taking them out for generations. The Sangeryes, a once prestigious and world-famous monster hunting family fighting off the hordes of darkness with an arsenal of steampunk weaponry and grassroots spiritualism to destroy the corruption the Jinnu cause in humans. But they've fallen on hard times in recent years, with the family matriarch Ma Etta trying to train the youngest generation of Sangerye monster hunters in the family tradition and managed to keep them alive just the same, unlike her current charge's parents. You see, both of them, Blink and Cullen, lost their family during the Red Summer. Blink lost her mother Nora, and Cullen, though I don't think we ever get his father's name, well, he lost his father during the same Red Summer. But there's one problem. Neither Blink nor Cullen are suited for the roles that they're meant to play. Blink, Ma Etta's granddaughter, is smart and fiery, aggressive, take charge, a skilled fighter, and a tactician. The main thing that makes her the worst Sangerye. The women of the Sangerye family are not allowed to hunt the Jinnu. Their place is in the apothecary, working roots and potions, and constantly prepping their trademark serum, Fifno. And I'm probably butchering the name here, but it's a special root and the key to bringing down the Jinnu. Blink doesn't want that lifestyle. She hates it. She wants to fight. She wants to stop the Jinnu on the front lines. Hell, She's even been sneaking out and fighting the good fight under her grandma's nose, working with a Chinese girl named Wu who comes from a similar family like the Sangeryes, only they're Chinese monster hunters as opposed to being black monster hunters, and they regard her being a monster hunter the same way the Sangeryes view Blink being one. We even learn through them that there are a pair of sisters from an Irish family somewhere in Boston who are doing the exact same thing. Why is Ma Etta so hard on Blink? Is it just family tradition? It seems to be the same for all of the other Monster Hunter families across all of the different cultures, but it's mostly due to the fact that she lost Nora, and she doesn't want the same thing that happened to her own daughter to happen to her granddaughter. And then there's Cullen. Cullen is the antithesis of Blink. He's not the most quick-witted. He's kinda shaky. He's more of an order taker, not an order giver. He's not a particularly good fighter, and no one would ever accuse him of being a field general. Yet he's the lone grandson, and it's his job to learn the ways of combating the Jinnu on the front lines. And he's not particularly interested in it. He'd honestly probably be better suited to taking up Blink's role, but that's not the Sangerye way, and Berg, a Sangerye cousin, is making it his mission to make a soldier out of Cullen if it's the last thing he does, and if Berg's training is anything to go by, it might just be. He is one of the more interesting characters in the series. Berg is a man of many words, typically speaking with a level of dialogue reserved for the most elite theater performances. Oftentimes, he's needlessly complex about his thoughts. He's a jovial soul, a jolly giant, if you will, kind-hearted, but definitely a tough love type. This is all in contrast to how he grew up. His father was not really at all the same way. A man who we briefly meet in the Bitterroot Red Summer one-shot, who teaches his son how to use the greatest weapon of all in the Sangerye arsenal, knowledge. Instead of trying to teach his son how to wield an axe before his time, teaching him how to kill Jinnu before he's ready, he wanted to make sure that he had some smarts in his head first. When you look at Berg as a child, you immediately wonder how he became this person, and you find out that this is how his father nurtured him with knowledge and basically helped him become the man that he is today, where originally he was a young boy who wasn't that different from Cullen, but with a mean speech impediment. Now he's this giant jovial soul that you would never have imagined ever had trouble with words. The main problem in this series that drives the narrative is that the Jinnu aren't the worst things out there anymore. Something far worse is beating the streets of Harlem, and while Berg and Cullen are taking a couple to someplace safe after curing them of being Jinnu, they run into a pair of police officers, and it's not a good look. Now, to be fair, there are policemen who know what they do and are fully aware and pretty much share with the Sangeryes a Batman Commissioner Gordon type relationship. But these aren't those police officers. Like I said, it's not a good look because did I also mention that the Jinnu typically only take hold of white men and women? Now, granted, they do infect other people, but those are predominantly the ones they seem to go after the most. So 2 black men in the dead of night, in the middle of the park, carrying a half-naked white man and a fully clothed white woman it's not the best look in 1924. Hell, it would be a bad look in 2019. And it goes about the way you'd expect. The police try to kill them without even hearing what they have to say, because of course, they're black. But the things that go bump in the night are changing, and one particular creature is coming for that ass. A giant bird-like creature, one who speaks, something Jinnu don't typically do, and worse yet, one who knows precisely who the Sangeryes are and calls them by name. Something even Cullen recognizes as not normal, and this new challenger injures Berg, causing Cullen to have to try and get them both to safety. But when they return to the Sangerye stronghold, and though Blink doesn't believe that Cullen saw what he saw, Ma Etta knows that something isn't right, because whatever it was that hurt Berg, it wasn't no Jinnu, because Jinnu can't infect others by attacking them, and Berg is very infected. But this creature, what is it exactly? It's definitely not a Jinnu, it's a person who willingly turned. A woman named Miss Nightsdale, working alongside one Dr. Sylvester. Two people who never knew each other a day in their lives until the Tulsa riots of 1921. The very same Tulsa riots that killed hundreds and destroyed Black Wall Street. A riot that many people, at least those outside of the black community, didn't know existed until they saw it on an episode of Watchmen in 2019. Both Nightsdale and Sylvester survived that riot, but only barely. And now they've become something more. You see, they didn't become Jinnu the way other people do through hate and greed. But what if you could suffer so much pain and tragedy and loss, losing so much, your love, your heart, your livelihood, your children? So much loss that you turn into something else. That is what Sylvester and Nightsdale are. They are called Insando. When we first meet them, it almost seems as though they want to work with the Sangeryes, but in reality, they're just using their presence as a means to an end. You see, they need the Sangeryes because of the serum of Fifno. It's the very thing that's going to help keep them alive and help them control their transformations. But deep down, I think they realize that the Sangeryes aren't interested in killing the Jinnu, that they are more invested in healing them, and that's not what they want. They want to stamp out the Jinnu and kill them permanently, even going as far as stealing the bodies of those that the Sangeryes have been healing and sapping the serum from them in order to control their transformations and prolong their lives. But the Sangeryes we've seen aren't the only Sangeryes left in the world. One such is Ford Sangerye, and as opposed to his cousin Berg, is a man of very few words. He doesn't have much to say most times, and he is probably the most hardcore of the Sangeryes that we meet. He's a man who's seen some shit, as evidenced in the Red Summer one-shot. When he's asked about his family, he remembers all of the terrible things that have happened, and he decides to say nothing. He's watched his family be ripped apart by the Jinnu, watched his family be slaughtered at the hands of the Jinnu. He doesn't believe in saving those corrupted by the Jinnu. He believes in exterminating those corrupted by them because in his eyes, they're already dead, something he tends to call amputating. He uses Fifno, no different than the rest of his family, but he uses a lethal dosage, whereas the Sangeryes don't. One thing that's funny here is that this is a sentiment that he shares with Dr. Sylvester and Miss Nightsdale. Amputation, not salvation. But despite this, he does seem to develop a soft spot, at least as much as one can for someone like this particular character, a white man by the name of Johnny Ray Knox, who was running with some Klan members, a group who unsurprisingly were about to lynch a black man until Ford came along and ended all of them, just as they were turning into Jinnu. So why did he save this lone white man? Well, it's simple. For all his misgivings, he clearly didn't truly believe the hateful things he was saying and doing. He was just a product of the people who raised him. He honestly didn't even really believe that the people he was with would actually lynch the black man they were holding hostage. He only thought they were going to scare him. More importantly, why does Ford believe anything he says? Because of all of them, he didn't turn Jinnu. His soul is clean, as much as his soul could possibly be for running around with the Ku Klux Klan. It's just that he's a misguided man, one who has now taken a vested interest in learning about the Jinnu and even helps Ford track down a Jinnu who turns out to be a demon hiding in human flesh, a gatekeeper, the opposite of a Jinnu. Creatures that are demons hiding in human flesh who guard hidden gateways into hell itself. And all of this reminds Ford too much of what happened during the Red Summer, and he knows that this is going to become something more. And if this is happening now, then something is definitely happening in Harlem where his family is, and this galvanizes Ford to go back home and help his family. And Knox follows Ford on his quest. Part of me wants to believe that shenanigans will ensue when this book picks back up later this year, but I'm cautiously optimistic they may show a genuine character turn for old Johnny Ray Knox. Another character that we meet is Uncle Enoch, a Sangerye who's been essentially disinvited from the family reunions, blamed for the outbreak that ultimately killed Blink's mother and father, though we're never really told exactly what he did to elicit that level of nuclear heat. What we do know is he seems to be a rather complicated man with a dark sense of humor and a taste for the dark arts and tinkering with dark magics and practices. Likely the reason the Jinnu had an outbreak 5 years ago, if I were a gambling man. But despite his misgivings, the family needs him if Berg is to be saved. Enoch is the only person who truly knows what's going on with him. But one thing Enoch doesn't know is what these new monsters are, at least not at first. He's never seen anything like this before, and right now, Harlem is being eaten alive once again, no different than before. People are turning into Jinnu left and right, specifically the police, most of which are white. And right now, the Sangeryes are overwhelmed. And the good Dr. Sylvester reveals himself as the leader of this monster riot. A war against the devils who raided Tulsa, payback for all the death and misery the real devils of this world have made them suffer. And he's not using devil literally. He wants revenge for Black Wall Street, the Tulsa riots, all the black deaths that have happened across the world due to the hatred and fear of white men. Now, thanks to his tragedies he suffered at the hands of racist white men, he's become something more powerful than any Jinnu they could ever dream or fear of becoming. A monster invincible to Enoch's dark arts magic. And what's worse, Cullen, while trying to help Enoch, gets sucked into a portal the same way Blink's mother Nora was during the Red Summer. So now the Sangeryes are stuck with a moral dilemma. Close the portal now and save Harlem, or leave it open to maybe save Cullen. And they don't even really have time to figure that out yet. Dr. Sylvester is turning Harlem inside out, but the family that slays together ultimately stays together, because when Blink, Ma Etta, Ford, and a recently sedated Berg pull up, things turn around for the Sangeryes. Hell, Ma Etta is out here throwing hands, and Blink solos Sylvester and puts him on his ass, but Nightsdale, ever his right hand, saves him from catching these pansexual hands of hers, because anybody can catch those bad boys. But Nightsdale risked everything to save Sylvester, because in doing so, she flew away in her bird-like form, trying to carry him to safety, while Ford did what he does best, kill monsters, blasting her with enough fifno to put down any Jinnu, let alone monsters like herself. And Dr. Sylvester is going to come back with receipts, make no mistake, and he only waits just long enough for Enoch to cure Berg of the infection that turned him into a monster before he brings his army of demons to raze Harlem to the ground. But before Sylvester can fully capitalize on the Sangerye's momentary flat-footedness, a gateway opens in the sky, and out come two hunters with an army of guards like Enoch had. They're efficient, deadly, and they strike like they've been hunting sangeryes for decades. More importantly, they fight like Sangeryes, because they are Sangeryes. Nora Sangerye, to be specific. Blink's mother and Ma Etta's daughter is not dead. She's been alive and well all this time on the other side of the gate. Her return has given them hope, because even Ford has to admit no one has ever come back from the other side. No one. And now, not just one person has come back from the other side, but two, because she didn't come alone. Another came with her, and his name is Cullen Sangerye. When Cullen was yanked through the gate, Nora was the one who saved him, and Blink's mother and Cullen's father, who was also thought dead alongside all the other monster hunters from across the world, had been building a resistance force against the demons trying to invade Earth. Not quite hell, this place, Barzak, is a way station between Earth and hell, a sort of purgatory. And in this purgatory, time passes differently. So even though it's only been minutes for the Sangeryes on Earth since Cullen was snatched through that gate. Cullen has spent the last indeterminable amount of years becoming a cold-blooded monster killer. No longer the weak-willed and incompetent monster hunter he was before. He's basically become Blade after training with his Aunt Nora all this time. And it's a good thing that this new battle-hardened Cullen and Aunt Nora have arrived, because Dr. Sylvester is the least of their worries. Hell, actual hell, is on its way right now. And that, in a nutshell, is the very first chapter of Bitter Root Volume 1, Family Business, by David F. Walker, Chuck Brown, and Sanford Greene. This book is so amazing. And honestly, I didn't tell you everything. I still left plenty in there for you to see for yourself, because this story is just that good. I basically just kind of introduced you to the family itself and the situations that they're dealing with. This book is just great. It's a great commentary on race relations. It's a great commentary on the time period of the 1920s in Harlem. And in a way, you know, how people always talk about, you know, the X-Men, the dynamic between, which is also a dynamic I've you know, when speaking to Chris Claremont, he's actually kind of debunked the whole difference between, you know, the Martin Luther King way of thinking and the Malcolm X way of thinking. He kind of boiled it down to something a little less specific, even though it does technically fit, but this is actually a little more closer to that narrative, where the Sangeryes are your kind of your Martin Luther King way of dealing with racism, trying to heal the wounds as opposed to amputating them, whereas Dr. Sylvester is the Malcolm X way of thinking. He wants to stamp out all racism and hatred, and in this world where racism can literally transform you into a monster, an actual monster, it's a very telling story, something I think we really need right now, especially when you see these shots where Dr. Sylvester is waging war against the police force. A police force, mind you, who have become overwhelmed with hatred and have become genuine. Not all of them, but a good majority of them have, and it's yet again, it's these little attentions to detail that really sell the story, that really paint this narrative that is so easy to just digest and relate to. I'm going to go ahead and admit, I know this story is not going to be for everybody. I know there are going to be people who are triggered by this story. Some of you may have been triggered right now by this very story, but, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If you were triggered by it, then I mean, I think that it's better that you feel something than feel nothing. And I think a lot of times people don't understand that just because a story or a piece of media, something, makes you feel hate or makes you feel disgusted or makes you feel some form of a negative emotion towards it, doesn't necessarily mean that the story was bad. It made you feel something. It would be bad if it made you feel nothing. I think people really get that mixed up. Yes, there are some things you shouldn't like. There are some things that should make you angry. Reading a story about a world where racism can turn you into an actual literal monster, that should make you angry. It should evoke that type of reaction from you where you're upset that something like that could happen, because honestly, that is something that is happening in the real world. People who are racist and bigots are literal monsters. Do they have fangs and tails and wings? No, but they are metaphorically monstrous people. And this is just a story just pointing that out. But anyways, this book has definitely had my attention since issue number 1, and I'm really excited for it because this story has already been picked up in the last few months by Legendary Studios, who are going to turn this into a movie, and I can't wait to see it. I will be there on day 1 when that movie comes out to watch it. I can't wait. I just love it. Image Comics is doing so much great work between David F. Walker and Chuck Brown and Sanford Greene on this team, going to Donnie Cates with God Country over an Image, and just everything they're doing is just gold. It's gold. And couldn't be more proud of all these different creatives over there at Image Comics. But anyways, let me know what you thought about Bitter Root Volume 1, Family Business by David F. Walker, Chuck Brown, and Sanford Greene. Sound off in the comments. So hey, you made it to the end of the video. Awesome for you. If you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I don't see how you didn't, do me a favor. Hulk smash that like button. And if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you click subscribe so you can become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. And tap that bell so you know when I post up. Also, feel free to go check out my Patreon, where if you chuck in a buck, you can get early access to most of my videos up to a week early. And if you have time, make sure you swing by nerd901.com, where you can find more of my content as well as other amazing stuff. Anyways, until next time, I love you 3000 plus ultra!